Welcome to the Journey to Wholeness, a podcast by I See My Baby Incorporated. Here, we dive deep into powerful stories of those who have overcome life's greatest challenges, stories of resilience, healing, and renewed faith. I'm Alicia Hurt, your host, and each week we'll speak to individuals who have transformed struggles with infertility, battles with depression, and crisis of faith into profound growth and purpose. Hello, everyone. How are you today? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Journey to Wholeness podcast interview. We have a special guest today. Now, all my guests are special, but she's really special. Her name is Dani Marie, and my kids, disclaimer, my first two kids, their middle name is Marie. So yeah, you're really special. I tried to do it a third time, but my husband's like, it's not happening. So I really like that name. How you doing today?
I love that. I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. I appreciate you. Hello to everyone watching and listening and tuning in. This should be a lot of fun.
Yes, ma'am. So let's just jump right in. That's just like how I like to do it. So can you
Yeah.
tell us a bit about your background and what brought you to this journey?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I am Dani Marie, born and raised here in Washington State. So people, not Washington, D.C., Washington State, Seattle, Washington, Pacific Northwest. So I've been here by way of my mother and father in the military, raised in a single parent household when my family decided to divorce when I was only 2 years old, and my mom decided to stay here for better opportunities. But for the most part of my life, just always a person of service, including 15 plus years in customer service, from working in fast food industries to then evolving and getting into a lot of government state jobs. But overall, just always wanting to help, coming from a single parent household, never really having a whole lot, knowing what it is to have a village around you. So that's how I was raised. My mother raised me in a church, Monday through Sunday, and that kind of a thing. So just always having the spirit of service, gratitude, wanting to give and see other people do well. And that led me to always working multiple jobs at a time, doing what I can when I was a single person, no children. That has since evolved to now a single millennial mom with 2 children. And I found myself during the pandemic kind of at a loss, at a crossroads. I had lost both of my full-time jobs. I was working grave shift with a 24-hour facility for at-risk youth, and then I would clock out, have 1 hour to get home, get my kid from my mom, and then have to clock in to work for the state unemployment office. And when both of those employers laid me off due to lack of funding and budget for my programs, I realized I was kind of having to start all over. And at that time, not only did I lose 2 full-time jobs, my father passed away, and I was just finding myself all over again. We talked a little bit about this, but it was the resurgence or an awakening for me. And I know a lot of people experience the same thing. And I like that you told me a little bit about the people that listen to your podcast, women who have had a loss, significant loss, have had to go through a lot of triumph. And for me, both of my children now are what you might consider rainbow babies. So I have been pregnant in the past and lost multiple children. So then all of this stuff shifted and all of this newness happened for me during the pandemic. And that's where I'm at in life, just having to rediscover myself, figure out more about who I am as a mom now, as a single mom, and now on a quest to amplify voices through podcasting.
Yes. Come through. And we'll do a plug at the end, but you can go ahead and tell them now, like, what's the name of your podcast?
Yeah, so actually I've ran the gambit. I've done 8 different shows, but right now I've landed on podcasting for newbies because a lot of people saw me and how it's transitioned me into this new career path. So I started to coach and teach. So podcasting for newbies is targeted for that podcaster who has nowhere or idea how to get started. So I help launch, grow, and monetize your podcast and bring it down at a level that people can understand. Podcasting for newbies. Talk Tacoma just launched because I said I have two boys and I've been raised here in Washington State. I want to be able to
Yeah,
give that back to my two boys. So we just started Talk Tacoma this week too. More about like
yeah, yeah.
what's happening in our city of Tacoma.
Yeah, it's so relevant, so needed. You guys heard it. At the bottom of this podcast, you'll see the links to reach out and schedule your time. There are a lot of people. I probably need to get on your schedule as well because even though I've done interviews, podcasting is very different. And you want to be intentional and make sure you're doing it right. Not just doing it, but doing it
Absolutely.
right.
Hey, you
Yeah,
guys,
so
Rock
your business is
Nation
very
and
relevant.
Jay-Z just started a podcast. So it's just we're new podcasts are popping up all of the time. And I think it just says that there is a lot of opportunity in this space. So definitely if you're interested, reach out. And thanks, Alicia, for that plug.
No problem. We gotta look out for each other.
Right.
So you have listed a lot of challenges. My condolences on your dad. I get it. Um, because my mom transitioned a year ago, and sometimes it feels like day one.
Mm,
My condolences for your babies. Because I too, struggle in that, and a lot of our listeners, as you alluded to, they've gone through it as well, both spiritual
right.
and carnal. Now, with those challenges, how did you find strength during moments of doubt or difficulty?
Mm. My faith. My faith.
Yeah,
And my mother is my rock, so being able to lean on her through all of those situations. And I'm overall a pretty tough person. And I think it's because I have endured so much in life that me getting over those hurdles earlier in life kind of helped me deal with what I'm dealing with now. But it has been my faith, just knowing that good, bad, and different things happen to all of us. And the best thing that you can do is not what you go through, but how you get through that situation and how you share your story to impact and influence other people. So it's been my faith. I know God has me. He is my anchor, reading, praying, meditating, those things have been very helpful. And then through that, knowing that at any moment you can reshape who you are, redefine who you are, and make those pivots and make a declaration that even though you've been through what you've been through, are not those circumstances. So just
right.
affirming myself constantly on a day-to-day basis and keeping my faith strong has been my saving grace. But then also the podcast. When I first started, my first podcast was with my mom. We had the mother and daughter duo podcast. And I'm like, we need to talk about, my life as a single mom, you raising me as a single mom. Now I have two boys I'll be raising up. What does that look like? We talked about mental health, childhood trauma, generational curses, and stigmas that single people face. And in those conversations, I've got a lot of clarity. I learned
Yeah.
my mom dealt with molestation, and I've dealt with the same things. And we've never been able to talk about that until we had that podcast. So that was very freeing and liberating for me. So faith, podcast, and then, constantly reaffirming myself through meditation and prayer.
I love to hear that your first response was your mother because in your intro, you spoke to your mom basically laying the foundation. You were in church like me all the
Right.
time.
All the time.
And all the time. And as a child, you don't understand it. It's like, ooh, I want to do something different. But that truly laid the foundation for you. So talk a little bit more about that because when people hear faith, they're like, okay, let me just pray. Let me just pick up my book. And it's like, no, you actually have to be prepared. You have to lay a
Right.
foundation.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, my mom, when she didn't have anyone, when she lived, came to stay out here in Washington State by way of Markham, Illinois, it was very different, life altering for her. So she had to lean into church. That was her saving grace. Finding a church family, helping her stay anchored in church, the word, and, people around her that would cultivate a space where she can feel nurtured and grow. So I saw that. We were adopted into a church family, so we would always work with every holiday, go to them and, lean on them for the holiday seasons. But just watching how she would usher in people, to build her village around her, how she was in church Monday through Sunday. We were there, second pew, right there next to the ushers and the first ladies of the church. And, really involved in the church choir. So just seeing her be a person of service. And now she has since went from sitting in the congregation to now an evangelist. So I've seen her growth in the church as well. And she's been maybe an evangelist for 15 plus years now. Been in the same church all of my life as we've been here in Washington State. So just see her get connected and stay rooted and grounded in that has been, what has taught me and ultimately has kept and covered me. So whenever we go through a situation, it's always, okay, let's all pray together, waking up with the oil on my forehead. Is
Yeah.
not what I'm
Yeah.
starting to do for my own children. So that's how she has
Yeah.
raised me in the church. And that's how I'm able to fall back on some of the same things now that I'm in the same situation.
Yeah. And Proverbs 22:6, I love this scripture. It talks about training up a child in the way he should go,
Yeah,
that when he's
and
old, you
not
will
depart.
not depart from it, right? And what you said is the true testament of that. And it's
Yeah,
like, all right, so my mom taught it to me. I feel it myself. I know God is real and I
right.
can lean on him because it says in the word, like not to lean on your own understanding, but lean on him, right? And so I love that. Now, you also talked about prayer and additional resources. So, are there, like, other than the Bible, maybe some devotionals or journaling? Are there other practices that you have done to help you through those challenging times?
Yeah, journaling is a big part of it. I'm not very intentional, like, okay, on this day, date, time type of journal with a nice little journal that helps you categorize everything and separate stuff. No, I'm more so like I have a notepad on my phone, and every opportunity or every download that God gives me, I'm writing, and it's just free flowing. So I'm not as intentional, like to say that I'm a journaler and I'm an avid person that likes to journal, but I do a lot of note taking, and that just helps me purge. But it's been my podcast. It's been like
Yeah.
whatever I want to talk about, I'll start a new podcast around it. So I've done the gambit. Like I said, Motivation Monday Mommy Meetup was at a time. I wanted to meet with other moms and talk about what it's like to have and maintain a personal and professional life. Or when I want to talk about things that are happening in mainstream that feel like they're impacting me, including politics, we have a podcast around that. So that's why I've had 8 shows. And that's been what I do for my own sanity as a hobby for my free time is a lot of podcasting. But it's free writing, journaling, prayer, you know, dancing around the house with my kids and singing to the top of my lungs to kind of help pass time and get through those tough, challenging days.
So you hit on so many things. I normally don't have to take notes. So I don't know if that's my age or you just dropping so many gems. I mean, either way, it's fine. So, first one you said was downloaded. So I would like for you to explain that or how God downloads because people may be thinking, all right, literally, I go, I see something I like, I right click, I download it, right? So
Mhm.
what does that mean when God gives you things that you need to download?
Yeah. So I just had like a big download just the day before yesterday, and they come very sporadically. Sometimes when you're in the shower, that's the best time that you get those downloads, waking up and, God's working on you as you're sleeping, and you just get this download when you're, top of the day showering. So sometimes you get those downloads. And what I mean by that is like maybe God will say, for me, it was like, Danielle, you've lived this hard life for so long. And a lot of it was self directed, not because I had to, but because I'm just doing too much, trying to get out of my own circumstances, not happy with the way things are in life. So, Danielle, you've been doing a lot of hard living for a long time, but if you would just move out of the way and lean more into me and take action when I give you action. That was the download God just recently gave me. So, when I have those downloads, I'm just speaking my thoughts freely in a notepad, or I'm speaking on camera like you and I are doing right now. And then I'll record
Right.
it, have it transcribed sometimes, and move that into maybe now I'm starting to do more ebooks and more writing like that. So when I get those big downloads, I'm documenting that process because I don't know what that means for me in the future, but it's important to have it documented either on a notepad or voiceover, so to speak. But yeah, God gives me a lot of downloads. If I'm driving, I'm in meditation, not listening to music, like I said, during the shower. And whenever you get those downloads, it's important now, like you said, in our big age, to write those things down. So you don't forget it because they're probably not going to come back. And when you miss it, you miss it. So make sure you
That's
are
right.
purging.
Now, does God download like, Danielle, this is God Almighty in heaven.
Right.
Thou art thou, Danielle. Like, how does he download for you?
Yeah. So I love that when you are anchored and you are, constantly doing the work, then God speaks to you and it's conversational like you and I are doing right now. So it doesn't have, it's not this audible, loud, audible sound that comes down, the voice of God. It's just the reasoning and kind of talking to yourself in your head and having that exchange. So that's what it sounds like. It's soft, subtle, comes to me like how you and I are speaking, conversational. That's the download. We're just
Yeah.
always talking throughout the day and having an exchange.
Yeah. Now, growing up, you would hear about like you have to do what's right. You have the good one on one shoulder, you have the bad one on the bad shoulder, and they're gonna be fighting and trying to tell you what to do, right? So, like, kind of talk through that on with our listeners because we have listeners like that went through with like me having a lack of having depression, a lack of faith, and at times the enemy would talk to me and I remember driving in the car. I've said this before on one episode, and literally I heard the enemy say, "Why don't you just open that door and just end it all? Like, and just be done with this." So when people are trying to tap in and understand when God is talking to them, and they may be new at it or rekindling their relationship, how can they discern if it's God or if it's truly, principalities and rulers of
Mm,
darkness?
oh, that's a good question. Okay, so first and foremost, I think that when it's from God, it just kind of makes sense. There's alignment, right? God is not going to put you in a compromising position. God is not going to tell you to do something that doesn't make sense or align with his word. And again, those downloads are helpful so that you can see and you can fact check and cross check. So if there's alignment, then it's probably from God. If it's not, if it's going to put you in a better position, then it's likely from God. Now, I have had those bouts of depression that have been very difficult for me to come out of. And if I'm honest, one of my downfalls is that even though I have a village around me who are always willing to step in and support me, I don't always go to the village when I'm experiencing things. So I do a lot of stuff in isolation. So sometimes going through those bouts of depression in isolation is not healthy. But my faith is very strong. I know God doesn't, He has more for me. I know that this is just a season that I'm going through. I've seen it through my mom. I've seen it through how He's kept me through right now today when I lost my dad and, had to be resilient. When I've lost multiple children, had to be resilient. So, when I have those experiences of depression, going back to those affirmations are important. Cross-checking with the word and the downloads that God gives me. And I do have a devotional. I need to get better about reading that, but I think that can also help um, with those affirmations and devotions when you're cross-checking and trying to reaffirm yourself. But if I'm honest, what's authentic to me is just um, constantly talking to God. Okay, God, I know that's not you. Okay, God, yes, I'm going to do more of what you're telling me to do. Okay, I'm going to go this way. I hear you talking to me, God, and I'm going to write this down so that I can retain it. Just very organic and conversational experiences, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. So I don't know. I can't explain it and be eloquent, but I can just say that for me, whenever I feel like things are in question, I can cross check with his word and the downloads that God has given me. And that's my response.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal response because in the word it tells us to prove him. And what
Yeah.
you said is what, so if you have a relationship with him, you can test him, you can prove him, you say, okay, God, I hear what you're saying. And I do it. I say, send Sally, send Sue, send Joseph, send a word, send,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, Alicia, you might be that Doubting Thomas, but Lord, if it's you, Lord,
That's
and
right.
he'll be like, all right, I know, Alicia, I got you. He gonna meet you where you are, and then
Right.
somebody may say something to me, even my child, and I'll be like, oh man. Now, I'm
Confirmation.
sometimes I'll be like, don't let it be my husband, because he gonna be like, I told you, you don't listen, but you prove him and you
Yeah.
try him and you say, okay, God, is this truly you? And if it is you, it's gonna sustain. It's not gonna be that hard and difficult. It's
That's
gonna be
right.
smooth because he didn't put his hands on it, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. You helped me put that all together because that's exactly what I wanted to say. Yes.
So you talked about purging. Give us some more,
Hmm.
sis. Tell us about what a purge is.
Oh my gosh. I don't really buy into all of the astrology signs and stuff, but I am a Taurus, and so I'm very stubborn and bullheaded, whatever that means. That's as much as I know, honestly. Just a very
Okay.
stubborn and bullheaded personality. And because I wanted to have a better life, I've always done things so hard and very harsh. And like you said, it doesn't have to be that difficult. It's very easy if you just lean in and trust God. So up until recently, when I first, lost everything during the pandemic, I was doing stuff the hard way, the long way, things that were just not progressive. And I could have been and arrived at a better place a lot sooner had I got out of my own way. So the purging is my bad attitude, my stubbornness, living life hard, working multiple jobs to not have anything to show for it at this time in my big age, having to be vulnerable about the fact that I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of hiccups, and that I'm just now getting to a point where things are clear and I have clarity. And part of it was like God had to humble me during the pandemic, take away everything that I was using and leaning on so that I could see myself for myself, so I could see a lot of my own flaws, so that I can step into the next phase of Dani Marie, so that I can live a more, people are saying now, the soft girl era, so I can live a more soft life. Like literally working the most grungy, hard, difficult jobs, hard labor, working two jobs for what? You don't have the house to show for it. Work, doing all of that stuff. And fighting my mom on certain things because, when you love somebody and you love hard, sometimes you just dig on that person because they're the easiest person that you can kind of dump on, and just being very ungrateful, a lot of stuff, right? So that's the purging, having to confront myself and be okay with, you made a lot of errors, a lot of poor choices in life, but the purging is, now you can step into a new you. Do not, what is it, new wine in new skin, right? So now I get to step into this new soft girl era where I am still, and I can be in the stillness, and I can live a more peaceful, happy, joyful life because I'm no longer in that survivor mode, grinding hard, working hard, and getting in my own way.
I like how you identified weaknesses, struggles, but you didn't sit in it.
Yeah,
You identified it, you recognize it, right? Like in alcohol class or the sessions, you say, hi, my name's Alicia, I'm an
that's right.
alcoholic. And then you do something about it, right? And
Mhm.
so that right there, like that's some wisdom. I hope you had your notepad and you wrote it down, because yes, we're gonna purge, we're gonna identify it, because we are our worst critics. So we gonna get checked, right? And then we're gonna do something about it.
Right. Yeah.
We're gonna do
Yeah,
something about it.
exactly. Exactly. And this is like, oh my goodness, now everything is, the downloads are coming and it's more clear. And it's like, okay, let's move in this direction. And doors are opening because now am still, and I can hear from God a lot more clearly. Yeah, because I've
Yep.
purged. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Growing up as a spiritual Baptist, Washington, D.C., Sacred Heart of Jesus International Spiritual Baptist Church, rest his soul, Father Lewis, one of his favorite songs was Humble Me, My Lord, humble me, my Lord, humble me, my Lord, humble me, my Lord, and let me do thy will. And what you said reminded me of that song, because in order for us to allow God to work through us and to make us better and fulfill our purpose, we have to purge ourselves. And that's a part of it, because for me, I'm hard-headed. And I don't know if you remember growing up, you would do what's your birth month? You like January, February, March, April, and
I
you
don't
would
know
try to
that.
identify your weakness. Okay, so well, maybe it just was a Landover, Maryland thing. But you would try to identify your new weakness. Okay, well, February, I'm nosy. Okay, well, no, I'm inquisitive. But no, I'm hard-headed. And a lot of times I would have to learn by falling. So it's like, okay, don't touch the stove. Why? And then I'm touching the stove and then I get burnt, right?
Ooh.
But if I recognize that and I'm purging, I'm like, okay, you hard, you don't listen. So actively listen. You got to humble yourself. You got to do exactly what the song said. You got to humble yourself. And in humbling yourself, oh my God, I be crying on, man. I be like, God is really dealing with me. But you got to humble yourself, break yourself down. Listen, take wise counsel, right? And allow God to change you and help
Yeah,
you see. Instead of
yeah,
having to keep learning these lessons, it's like, all right,
that's right.
God, what should I do next? Right? That's a part of the humbling process. That's a part of the purging, right?
That's right.
And one key thing that you said is, now I know what I've done. God's downloading to me. I'm purging. I'm renewing myself. How do I get past these things? I still hurt. I still want that baby. I still want that business. I still feel bad about how they let me go on that job. This new journey is different. Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, you gave them your response. One of your mechanisms to healing is your podcast. It's very
Mhm.
therapeutic to you.
Yeah,
It's freeing. It releases you. Like, really help the listeners understand how you're using it as a tool.
yeah. First and foremost, it feels good to give back and pour back into other people. That's self-gratifying. So when I'm helping people get to shed off and purge through their podcast, then I feel happy and self-gratification. That's number one. Two, when I'm talking about my first podcast, mental health, parental abandonment, mom, my dad wasn't there. Do you have any ideas why? What was the dynamic in your relationship? Because it's been 30 years and I've never had that clarity. And to know you've been living, you know, living this life and don't even know your background and your history is also a big deal. So just getting clarity about stuff that we've never talked about was helpful for me. Talking about mental health, you know, listening and hearing stories, because we would share in our mommy moment segments, we would share parts of other women's stories. So to know that we're not alone in some of the things that we experience and that we go through is also important and good to hear. Hey, this is happening to women across the world. Yes, you're a single mom, but there are single moms who have been through the same things you have been through, and they have now created this amazing life for themselves. Hearing those stories are helpful. So that's how podcasting has been helpful for me. Hearing stories, establishing myself as an expert in a space, when you feel like I've lost both jobs, who am I as a person? Reclaiming my identity through podcasting as I've become helpful to other people, building a business that now I can live and go with my children and homeschool them and still be able to be home, making money through podcasting has been helpful, created stability for me where I don't have to work the two different jobs anymore. So those ways I've been able to uh, redefine myself through podcasting and be liberated through my podcast. It's because now I'm the expert in something all over again. Now I've carved out my own lane. Now I'm able to homeschool my kids and be with my kids. And that's important to me because I grew up as a latchkey kid. Relationships with my kids are so important. So that's how it's been helpful through podcasting.
Yes. Yes. Now, you talked about various losses. You talked about, of course, your dad transitioning and then the loss of your children. Do you feel like as you start to have various loss and things happening, that you sometimes take a step back in your healing process?
That's good. The first time ever, and it happened when I was working one of those full-time jobs. I was working, like I said, for the state doing unemployment claims. And I had to tell my boss, I am not performing at my highest and my best self. It's just a lot that I'm experiencing. I'm sure she's heard that a lot of times during the pandemic when we were all just getting hit so hard with so much. But that was the first time I ever openly spoke out about something like that, especially to my employer. Even to the point that I told my children's father and my mom, and they were like, "Girl, why would you tell your boss that you're going through a difficult time? You know, you don't bring the home life into the work life." We've always been taught that. But she was like, she was a person of color, she was a woman, and she said, we have things like the employment assistance programs that you can tap into. So that's when I got hooked up with a counselor, got the 5 free counseling sessions, and that was very
Right.
helpful for me. I was able to talk about everything I was going through, and I couldn't really talk to anybody else the way I was able to express with that person they assigned to me. So that was the first moment in life that I was outward and I spoke outwardly about, okay, this is what's happening and I need help. Any other time,
Right.
it's like, even though I've experienced all those losses, never told anybody. When I went through miscarriages, never spoke out about it. Didn't want anybody to try to console me or help me get through those situations. It was just me on me and my mom. But that was the first time I had to confront myself and be open and honest that I just could not handle anymore and I needed help. So, does that answer the question? Okay.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it
So
rolls
it was,
right into my next nugget that you gave, and it was talking about isolation,
yeah,
having a village, but then doing it alone. And
yeah,
one of our taglines is "You are not alone," because
yeah.
I felt that. Even though I had my mom, I had my dad, I had my husband, I had my siblings, I had my friends, I had my coworkers, right? Because I'm just very transparent. So everybody was rallying around me. I still was in isolation, feeling alone, only because I thought they could not understand and identify with what I was going
Right.
through. Talk about it, sis.
Sometimes that's all in our own head. I feel like they won't get it. I feel like they don't identify or what I'm going through doesn't resonate or can't connect or they can't help me in that situation. But again, living a hard life, getting in our own way of our own progress, to not speak outward and openly. And sometimes those things are true. These are not the people that can help me. But if you don't speak out and say something, no one can help you. They can't tell you, you're right, I cannot help you, but I can put you in contact with the person that helped me through this situation. So sometimes feeling like you are isolated is something that we put on ourselves. It's a weight that we carry ourselves and we don't have to carry alone. And speaking out and telling someone when you need help. Again, going
Right.
back to that, check on your strong friends because those are the ones that oftentimes need it the most because they feel like they're
Yeah.
carrying everybody else's burdens. So yeah, I've experienced that too. Obviously, you pulled it from what I said. But yeah, living in isolation, not wanting to speak out because you are the strong friend and feeling like you don't want to be a burden to anybody else and what you're going through is a real thing. But I would say to that person that's listening, reach out and, sometimes it's just speaking it out loud. Sometimes it's just not even having somebody fix all of your problems, but just being able to voice your issues with someone is helpful. That for me, just having a reality check and saying, hey, this is real and transparent for me, this is vulnerable for me, is healing in itself. Just speaking things out and not going through it alone is important.
So you hit on something. Remember I told you I did some crazy stuff yesterday. I like took a flight, a round trip flight in one day. Right? And during that, my sibling picked me up so we could do this race of activity as a being a landlord in another state. And so we were in the car driving, and the conversation came up because I'm the oldest for my mom, and my sibling, the youngest one, said, was vulnerable about being strong. And so I apologized in that moment, and I
Mm,
said, you know what? Now at 40, being strong is defined different than when I was telling you this at 18 through 20 to 25 to 30 to 35. And I said, I am sorry because, and I'm going to try not to get emotional,
oh,
as a older sibling, you take for granted the impact that you have and the impression that you have, on those younger ones. And I apologized in that moment because I am defining strength differently. Strength is tears that flow from my eyes.
mhm,
Strength is being able to say, I can't do this. I'm
yeah,
overwhelmed. I need help. That is strength. And so when you talked about checking in with your strong friends, it kind of struck a nerve. Um, And you know what? It needs to be said because I walk around with the dress that I love from Temu. And it says she is strong. But when people see that, and that's in Proverbs 31, they're thinking, oh, she is strong. Okay, sometimes I am, but that's
right,
not what I'm talking about. Not at 40. So talk
right.
through it. What does that mean to you? What does strength mean to you?
I would agree. Strength is now being able you've lived this life, you have all of this information who has shaped you into who you are. And it's just being vulnerable and open with your truth, being real and sitting in your truth so that that can impact and influence somebody else. Living your life as a testimony, wearing your heart on your sleeve, um, being open and vulnerable with the fact that you don't have it all together, but resourceful because you know what and who to tap into when needed. It's being real with yourself and, like you said, going through those range of emotions, but being able to, now that I have this information and wealth of knowledge, I know where to place these feelings. I know how to harbor and use these feelings to push me forward. I cry, um, but for me, and it's always been this way, I cry maybe for about a day, but then I'm back into happy, or I'm trying to get back to where I'm in a happy space.
Yeah,
So that's what it looks like for me. It's like, you know, having this information, having these experiences, and wearing it with a badge of honor, telling people that, I've been through a lot of tough, hard, difficult situations, but this is a part of who I am, and I get to redefine and reshape who I am every day. The things that I've
yeah,
been through are not all of me, they're a part of me. And again, I'm still walking in my purpose and finding myself, being truthful about the fact that this is a learning curve and every day is a learning opportunity. But yeah, it's like nobody can put me in a box. Nobody can define me by what I've been through. I know better than anybody what I've been through. And, I'm happy to share, like you are, happy to share your story and be very transparent because now it's a part of your story and his story, her
that's right.
story in this case. But yeah, it's just happy about what you've been through and sharing that with people so that they can also be better individuals as well.
Yep. I love what you said about people putting you in a box and seeing you certain ways. I had two recent incidents, and one was yesterday when the lady was escorting me through that line at ATL International Airport. Whoo, Lord, I feel it in my shanana. Oh my goodness, that was an experience.
So
But
busy, crazy.
oh my, busy is an understatement.
Oh
Oh
man,
my God. So one person was like, "Oh, it's the busiest place airport in the world." I was like, "Oh my God, I believe it today." But
good to
anywho,
know, right?
it is. Pack your patience, okay? Um, she we were walking through and we were just talking about like my observations sitting there, and I was like, customer service has changed over the years. I really feel
Mhm.
like that old woman, and so we just started talking, and I was like, how long have you worked here? And she said, oh, a month. I was like, okay. And we got on the train, and then I said to her, well, what's next? What do you
Mhm.
really want to do? Without saying, this ain't it, sis. And she paused and she could not respond to me. And I
Mhm.
said, think about it, dream. What do you like to do? Right? Because I'm telling her, step out of this box.
Right.
You are good with this customer service, but there's more. God has
That's
more
right.
for you. Right?
Yeah.
And she started to dream and she said, I like to write. I did go to medical school, and
Oh,
because, that was easier to do. And then I can have a career. And I said, yeah, but you just told me you like to write. So tell me more. Well, maybe I need to go to school for journalism. I said, well, what do you like to write? Fictional, like some creative stories. And you could just see the light bulbs
oh,
start going
wow.
off. And she was just like, wow, like no one's really ever asked me this. And she's like, oh my God. And I was like, well, I've written over 34 books. She was like, what? I wouldn't have
Wow.
thought that. Why? Because you're escorting me? Because I look a
Mhm.
certain way? I mean, I was dressed bummy. That's okay. It's fine. But don't let nobody put you in no
That's
box.
right.
Period.
That's right.
Point
That's
blank.
right.
The end. And I gave her my card and she started to scan the code because I was like, I'm hungry, girl. We go get something to eat. And she was like, I'm impressed. And I'm telling you, I know after our conversation and meeting that young lady that seed was planted. She not gonna be in nobody box. She gonna
That's right.
even if it's just her pinky toe gonna come out the box. She coming out that box. So I love how you said, do not allow people to put you in a box. You have
That's right.
arrived. You can do it. Whatever
That's
you
right.
put your mind to, you can do. Sis, come on, tell them, sis. Tell them,
And
Danny.
I like the fact that you acted on boldness and you were emboldened to tell this person and inspire and influence her and speak life into her. And it's part of your own experiences and what you've been through. But I love the fact that, it wasn't just a fly by night or a casual ride to getting you use that situation to speak life into somebody when you could have just been like, oh my gosh, it's busy, I'm tired, I don't feel like it. But instead you poured into somebody even when maybe your cup was not full, at that time in that moment. So I love that you acted on that. And that's what I mean by just being open, wearing your heart on your sleeve from your own experiences, because now you have this story that you can share with other people that would influence them on their journey as well. So I love that you said that and spoke life into her. And who knows, you said that seed was planted. Who knows where that would take her? Hopefully, you two exchanged information because 34 books is a big deal. So she definitely
Oh,
she
thank
was
you.
aligned with the right one. But yeah, that was powerful. And that's oftentimes I'm gonna leave this light alone because it keeps going out. But yeah, that is a lot of who I am today too. It's just like, hey, you can get out and you could do it. And I'm living proof that you can always, as long as you are here on earth, my mantra and how I live my life is like new day, new opportunities. And every
Right.
day you wake up is another opportunity to get it right. It doesn't matter what happened
Yeah.
yesterday. I've been told how I grew up in church is that as long as you're still here, there is time and God wants you to do something. So every day you wake up, you should be looking for that. And every day, new manna, every day, new opportunities, every day, speaking new life, every day, walking into something different. So
Yes.
yeah, I might have went on a tangent there, but I was just happy
No,
and
this is
influenced by what you
good.
okay. I was happy and influenced by what you said because so often nowadays, especially, we just kind of do these, get into ourselves, don't feel like talking, don't feel like acting on obedience when we hear that voice of God telling us we need to talk to somebody and you don't know what opportunities are being missed because you're not sharing your truth and vice versa. So that was that was so aspirational and influential for me to hear from you. So I appreciate that.
Amen. So listen, sis. What's one message as we wrap up that you hope listeners take away from your story?
One message I hope you guys take away from is that every day you have an opportunity to redefine yourself. Every day you get to write a new chapter in your book. I would say make sure you're doing it in alignment with God. Make sure it's the will of God. But every day you have an opportunity to take that step forward and walk in your purpose. And again, going back to not allowing anyone to put you in a box, not anyone who can deter you from the calling that God has for you. So every day live with purpose and intention. And as long as you're taking that first step forward, God is going to meet you halfway. And then go get
Amen.
my ebook, 52 Weeks to Podcasting Success.
That
Because if
part.
you want to
So
start
how
a
can they
podcast,
find you?
yeah, it is DaniMarie across all socials. It is DaniMarie. And then 52 Weeks to Podcasting Success on Amazon and Etsy.
All right now. Okay, so you talked about affirmations. Do you have one favorite one that you can share?
My favorite one is from the Bible, Jeremiah 29, for I know the plans I have for you, plan to prosper you, to give you a hope and a future. And that's basically the theme of what we talked about today. So that's my affirmation that I want to share with everybody, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I
Come
have for you.
through.
Uh-huh.
Come through, word. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, Dani. Thank you guys for
Thank you,
listening.
Alicia.
Stay tuned. You're not gonna this ain't the first and last time. Like, you coming back, okay? I'm just telling you that now.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.